neuroscience, quantum physics, biology, plant medicine, non-dual tantric meditative practices. We will be exploring these concepts with experts to provide insight. Get ready to melt reality with us. Our guest today is Raghu Markus, who is the executive director of Ram Dass's Love, Serve, Remember Foundation. And to explore Raghu's life and work, I want to open our conversation with a bit of background on Ram Dass himself. The Love, Serve, Remember Foundation is dedicated to preserving and continuing the teachings of Neem, Karoli, Baba, and Ram Dass. To begin, in 1961, while at Harvard, explorations in human consciousness were led by Richard Alpert, later known as Ram Dass, in collaboration with Timothy Leary, Ralph Metzner, Aldous Huxley, and Allen Ginsberg, to pursue intensive research with psilocybin and LSD-25 and other psychedelic substances. Out of these experiences, Albert published 2 books, The Psychedelic Experience, based on the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and LSD, published by New America Library. Because of this highly controversial research, Timothy Leary and Richard Alpert were dismissed from Harvard in 1963. Today, we have the honor of spending time with Raghu Markus, who met Ram Dass in the late 60s and spent 18 months in India with Ram Dass and Neem Karoli Baba. In 1974, Raghu collaborated with Ram Dass on a box set, Love, Serve, Remember, a musical anthem to mysticism. Raghu lives in Ojai, California, and is the executive director of Love, Serve, Remember Foundation. He also hosts the Ram Dass Be Here Now podcast, as well as his own Mind Rolling podcast. He is the producer of Becoming Nobody, a Ram Dass documentary feature film that was released in 2019. Raghu, welcome. It is wonderful to have you here. What a wonderful journey you've had at the center of a vast mystical renaissance for Western society. Can you please share with our listeners your early journey and what inspired you to travel to India at such a young age, and how you began with this quest?
Well, I guess we start with a good place to start is Ram Dass, obviously, and a story told many, many, many times by me that is still the exact moment in which really my life completely turned around. And that was, I was running a rock and roll radio station. I was a program director of a rock and roll radio station in Montreal, where I'm from. And I got a call saying there's someone on the line that wants us to help promote a lecture. And I said, okay, send them back. I'll talk to them. And they said, we are hosting Richard Alpert. No, they didn't say Richard Alpert. They said Ram Dass, because he was Ram Dass by then. He had been in India the first time in 67, 8. And I said, well, I don't know Ram Dass. And they said, Richard Alpert, Tim Leary? And I was like, okay, I loved them. They were heroes, right? Back in that day, for sure. So I said, all right, but you must have some previous recorded talk of his, so I know what we're talking about. So they sent one over to the studio, and I went in, and that moment was a tantamount change, because there was somebody, who seemed to know something, but wasn't a didactic kind of a person, saying this is the way, just not explaining, but characterizing his experience in India and what happened to him, where he went to India looking for a map of consciousness, and he found it in this being, Neem Karoli Baba. So, but it was also the way in which he was so human. He was so honest about his own screw-ups, his dark thoughts, all of it. So it made me in that moment, okay, I'm okay. All right. It's just human. It's okay. And so it took a load off, really, in that moment. It's also, I've been thinking all this stuff. I'd been into Eastern mysticism to some degree prior, the years prior to that, I had some idea, but not really that much of an idea. And the way he could characterize it through his psychological training and his Western mind made it just a perfect vehicle for us to go, oh, okay, this makes sense. So I went and I said, all right, where is he? I got to meet him. So I literally ran out of the station and I met him. He was staying at somebody's house. He was alone though. And we just did what Ram Dass used to do, or did for the entire span of his life, just be in the moment, be here now, right? It seems like an iconic phrase, but in the reality, he just would drop Ram Dass, Richard Alpert, and there was just a pool of, what do you need? I'd be happy to help you. And a trust, that maybe when I was a baby I had with my mother, but a trust that I hadn't really encountered in my adult life. And I just started swimming in a place where I felt free, not encumbered by, how we're getting to know each other here, even on this Zoom. So who are you? Who am I? We don't really know each other. But the reality was, in this case, there wasn't any, he really was able to efface that personality in order to be there for what, in this case, what I needed, which was, I just needed connection. That's what I needed. And so that trust led me to an intuitive place, our intuitive place that we all have. And there was no question that I was going to go after finding the guru in India. Not even, I had a high paid, powerful job. I was 23 years old. I was already way at it at a very young age in terms of career and all that. And I gave it all up because I had to see what the hell he was talking about. And so eventually, a year later, when he went back, he said, I'm going back. I said, all right, well, I'm going. Well, I can't really tell you the name, and I can't tell you where he is, but I'll be in touch with you in India. Go to American Express in Delhi, or Mumbai, wherever. And so I did. And eventually he couldn't find Maharaji for a while. Maharaji, there was no way that you would expect he's going to be anywhere at any one time. You'd hear about, he was just in, and you'd go and then you'd track him down somehow if he wanted you to do that. Anyhow, eventually I did. And when I met Neem Karoli Baba, the first moment, first of all, that feeling of home. It wasn't new. I knew, oh God, I've known you forever and forevermore. There was that infinity aspect to it. And I just, I was luxuriating in that home hot tub, so to speak, if you like hot tubs. It's a good analogy. But the next thought I had was, oh shit, that's what Ram Dass was all about. And I recognized, he had opened up, and this energy, it just came through him to whoever he met. In those days, he was on fire. Absolutely. Going through America, doing those tours that he did that became Be Here Now, the book. It was extraordinary. So in that moment, I even thought to myself later, okay, that's it. I have nothing else. What else is going to happen here? Of course, a whole lifetime of karma being evaporated, as best one hopes can happen. And certainly with in this particular relationship, it's just an enormous speed up of that. That is one of the primary purposes of a guru. Is not even a good word, because we have the laundry mat guru next door. I don't know. In India, every second store has got some god or god. Well, you've been there. So these meanings have gone out. But a being that is no longer polarized. There's no me and you anymore. So that's what I found. to this day, we do our best to share that thing.
What a start. What a start.
Yeah,
what a,
really.
As a young man to have that influence and just to know in your heart to just go over there, just pick up and leave and go over there. Like you, I was 17 when I went to Kashmir to study with a non-dual tantric teacher named Swami Lakshmanju. And I was sort of in a naive way following my heart and not really knowing the extent of the wonder of that experience. And so I wonder if you could share a little bit more about meeting his teacher and the tradition that you practiced with Ram Dass and his teacher.
Well, first of all, no teacher. He was not a teacher. He taught us nothing. He never gave talks. He did not teach, practice, nothing. Absolutely nothing. We did stuff that we found was happening. Like, the first thing that comes to mind is called the Hanuman Chalisa. It's 40 verses in praise of the monkey god, Hanuman, right? 40 verses in Hindi. I could barely say hello in Hindi at the time. But do you know who Krishna Das is, you guys?
Yeah.
So yes. Krishna Das, who's the probably biggest chant guy doing that stuff in the world, I would say, he caught on to it and said, oh, this looks cool. They seem to be doing it. Somebody's doing it. And so we decided, with our mentors, because we had a few people that were close to Neem Karoli Baba that were our mentors, and they taught it, so he helped teach us that. And we found that it was just all we cared about was hanging around, just hanging out with him. We didn't care about teachings or nothing. If you want to hear how something went, my, famous story that I tell, I thought I'm with a Hindu guru. Really, yes, he was Hindu, but this shows you that it was way beyond Hinduism or any ism whatsoever. In fact, when I first came, the first thing, he'd stick his finger and go Sabek, which in Hindi means all one. Hanuman, Christ, Krishna, Buddha, blah, blah, Mohammed. There's only one thing going on. So we got that drilled into us. So that is the reality of our tradition, is that completely nothing to do with any specific anything. Yes, we picked up a lot of Hindu stuff. So so in terms of the Hanuman Chalisa, it was a way to just get to spend time with him, because he didn't care about nothing. There wasn't anything. There was no mental anything going on. He was more like a computer, really. Although I wouldn't have thought of it that way. Now I look back and go, it was just whatever anybody needed is what happened, from an apple being thrown to you and not to another person. It was extraordinary in reality. So, but now that Hanuman Chalisa, there is like tens of thousands or more, I don't know how many, who actually have Westerners who had never gone over there, never gone to India, who know this and are practicing, using it as a practice. It's extraordinary. So anyhow, I sit down and I say, okay, I guess I should get a mantra or something. Thinking like the way you're just asking me, what was the teachings, so what mantra I said, okay. But instead of mantra, I said, well, how should I meditate? I thought, I don't know why I said that. So this is what he said. Meditate like Christ. When he was nailed to the cross, he felt no pain. He was in love with all beings. So that went, first of all, I'm Jewish, and I never had any whatsoever. I went to not yeshiva, but something like that when I was in parochial school. So I was like, that was left field big time. I had no idea anything about Christ. And so Ram Dass actually came. He wasn't there then, but he came that night, and I told him the story. And I said, why don't you ask him? Well, how did Christ meditate? Maybe we'll find something out. So figuring he had a much more convivial relationship because he had been with him. So he goes in, there's him, Krishna, a few others. And he says, you said to meditate like Christ. How did Christ meditate? So he stopped, he closed his eyes, he sat up and said nothing for a couple of minutes. And we were all like, you know, when your kids are around your parents and something weird is going on, we had no idea what was going on. And then tears came from his eyes. And he said, and he opened them and he said, you don't understand. Over and over and over that we had no idea. We don't understand. He was lost in love with every sentient being. He sacrificed himself for everyone. He never died. He went over and over. He said he never died. Anyhow, in the midst of that, we had basically, in India, it's called darshan, being in the presence of. We were in the presence of Christ. So after that, everything, it was just a complete game changer. And there was nothing to do, I knew, with Hinduism particularly, except we picked up what we liked. We liked singing. Krishnadas was he was a singer and coming out in college. He was almost with a very big band. I forget their name. And I was totally into it. Many of us. Jao Uttal, who is a great musician, who is also a wonderful proponent of this. So we loved singing. So we started chanting and learning the Chalisa and other things. And that's, and whatever we could do that would put us in front of that thing that was like, I always say, like Haagen-Dazs. Some people say, well, what about, Jerry, whoever, Ben and Jerry. And, you experience that and you just want to go back to that. I just have that, it's like visceral thing. So that's all we cared about. We didn't care about anything else. We weren't, that first day or two, maybe a few days later, I asked about meditation. Ram Dass asked about it as well when he was first there. Not that time that we were together, but the previous time. He said, how can I raise my Kundalini? And he's thinking, he has all these friends that have been doing these incredible practices forever, getting secret mantras, to open up, his Kundalini and flower at the top of his head. This is what he was looking for. Maharaji said, feed people. And he said, how, that was so penny ante. What do you mean feed people? I'm talking about, well, maybe I'll ask him about getting enlightened. How can I get enlightened? And Maharaji said, love everyone. So that's where love, serve, remember. Those days, that is the only thing we got, if you would call a teaching. And it was based on what this story of Ram Dass. And
yeah, you feel it.
What
a
wonderful, yeah. And so what I'm hearing is there was no syllabus when you got there, right? It was very no syllabus, right? You weren't syllabus, right?
No, far from it. There was no rationale at all. In fact, a lot of the dialogue with him, he'd be asking us questions. Like, did you just get a letter from your mother? And no. You sure you didn't get something and something wrong with your auntie, blah, 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 something like that. Next day you get the letter. It was just shattering our mind. That's what happened.
Amazing. Yeah, so we'll probably transition between, India and back in the United States, but at some point back in the United States, you end up producing a number of projects with Ram Dass. Mm-hmm. Can you share a little bit, give us a little bit of the landscape of what it was like to work together with him on projects over the years, and kind of maybe share a little bit about what moved you most about the work you did together and these projects that you did together with Ram Dass? Well,
I got my marching orders in a weird way. Maharaji once turned to me and said, what did you do back in Canada, America, whatever? And I'm trying to think. It's all through a translator, although he knew what he needed to know at any given second of anything. And I'm trying to think, how do I say program director of a major rock and roll station and blah, blah, blah. Before I could even get it out in English, he looked at me, he went, broadcaster. And that ended up well, I did it because I met Ram Dass at a radio station, and he was just, I knew he was there then, blah, blah, blah. But that became my life's work since then, although not all the time did I do projects like with Ram Dass. I had a record company for 20 years later on, and I got my chops in marketing and producing when I was younger and all of that. But basically, actually, Ram Dass, he was like, I would drive him crazy because I was a producer and I wanted him to do this, that, or the other. And he didn't want me to tell him what to do. And so we always had that ongoing dialogue all the way up till, even the last year of his life. We had fun with it because he was not attached. I mean, he could be, just like anybody, have a really firm opinion and not want to change, something. Especially we're talking about it's his teachings and so on and so forth. But all I remember is we always had a lot of fun together. And, I met so many great people as a result of hanging out with him and doing this kind of work with him. So it was really joyous. That first record set, that the first thing that I did with him was called Love, Serve, Remember, which was the only thing we got. And it was 6 vinyl records with a beautiful insert with all sorts of different graphics there. And he spoke, some of it was this radio show, WBAI in New York, which still exists. He worked with one of the DJs, and they did Ask Ram Dass kind of thing. And we took a bunch of that and put it on the record. Those are extremely great responses, to common issues that everyone has, of course, to this day. And then there was some music, and then there was some readings from the third patriarch of Zen, phenomenal, just extraordinary passage. And the Ramayana, which that was something that we were very, very connected to because of Hanuman. And many of the Indian devotees used to say that he was basically an incarnation of Hanuman. And, we used to say, well, good, that's very good. We have no idea, nor do we care, but go ahead, Very
good.
Yeah. This is actually the 50th anniversary of that record set. We actually took some of the Ram Dass's readings or talks, meditations, and put extraordinarily beautiful electronic spatial music underneath them. And it'll be a beautiful album that'll commemorate the initial release of it 50 years ago. That starts to be a big number all of a sudden, no?
Wow.
All right. That's wonderful. So tell us a little bit about your online course offering with Alan Watts and Ram Dass.
Oh,
tell
yeah.
us a little bit about that project. Yeah. Sounds wonderful.
Well, the funny thing is, as we were developing it, now, I thought, I know Alan Watts, of course, from back then, he was one of the OGs, him and Ram Dass, basically, to get Eastern mysticism over from the East to the West. So I started, I had to actually listen to some of his talks, just because, making sure, the curation was done properly. So I started listening, and then I realized, shit, I never listened to Alan Watts before. Really? I read some stuff because he had some books out there. So I read a little bit, but not to the extent that, first of all, not to the extent that I listened to once I caught on to Ram Dass, I wasn't really interested in much else until I got, until some years later, as I started meeting Tibetans, because, that's something that directly interests me personally. So as I started listening to Alan, I thought, wow, he has such a poetic way to contextualize the Eastern thought in a way that's very anti-rational, I would say. It's a whole other perspective, and it is intellectual. That's who he was, a philosopher as well. And But then, so then I started, they gave me the Ram Dass talks, because each week is a different theme. Week 1 is around separation, separateness. Week 2 is around dealing with like money and career and happiness, stuff like that. Third week is about balance, the way of things and how do we get into balance. And the fourth is love and transformation. So I started listening to Ram Dass's take on these different themes against Alan, and it was so perfect. Two completely opposite viewpoints, yet they meet at the top of the mountain. So that's basically what this course is. So it really prompts you in completely different ways, and it engages another part of your brain. That's for sure.
So great. So great. I mean, I would have to say the first 2 books in my yogic journey when I was very young, 14 years old perhaps, was Ram Dass's Be Here Now and Autobiography of a Yogi, which I think every young yoga student has read. And I honestly memorized many of the pages from Be Here Now. I remember the ice cream cone in the sky that doesn't melt. And honestly, I still have my Be Here Now book from 50 years ago earmarked on my bookshelf. And so I wanted to ask if you can share a little bit about why Be Here Now became sort of a sensational book globally, and what it teaches readers.
I have no idea why, actually. I mean, I think it was just so unusual in so many different ways. A, his story, obviously, but B, the middle section, the brown pages, with all those different aphorisms and drawings. Nobody had ever seen anything like that. To this day, it is turning college kids on. That and a hit of acid or whatever psychedelic they're into, and we get mail. Oh my God! I just discovered Ram Dass. I had a psilocybin drip, the same basically that was happening to us way back when. So I think that's why it became as popular as it still is. Sells hundreds of thousands a year. I mean, that's extraordinary. After all these years. But I think that it's just gave people an idea of a different way of thinking. I think that's the basic transmission from more than anything else through those aphoristic, through the aphorisms and the contextualization through the graphics, which are so mind blowing. They did a phenomenal job of that. So, I think that it really opens the door. I mean, there is resources. There was, there still is. I'm not sure how relevant some of them are. Some of them are completely relevant. Like, we were here's another thing you talk about. Okay, what kind of syllabus did you have? David, you asked me. So here's an example of how it happened and how that is a major resource in Be Here Now. And it's called Vipassana meditation. Vipassana meditation, in my mind, is the most efficacious meditation you can possibly do, the easiest way to get into meditation, the most connected to mindfulness. But what happened is Ram Dass went back to India, in the fall of 70, end of the summer. He couldn't find Maharaji. So somebody came up and said, oh, there's this great meditation course in Bodh Gaya. Why don't you try that? And it turned out a bunch of Westerners, Krishna Das was there and many others. Danny Goleman, who wrote Emotional Intelligence, which everyone should buy, by the way. They all went there because, basically for Ram Dass, he couldn't find him. And they did a couple of months of courses. They came out of those courses on a bus to Delhi. Maybe there was 5 people or something. And they got to a place where, to a city called Allahabad, where the confluence of the Yamuna and Ganges River underneath the Saraswati. So it's where the huge Magh Mela, where 10, 15, 20 million people get together every 12 years. And so nothing was happening there, but Ram Dass, he wanted to go get a hot bath in Delhi is what he wanted after that retreat. And then but somebody piped up, oh, I was at this Mela. There's a beautiful place we can see a wonderful Murti statue of Hanuman. So Ram Dass was the decider because he had engaged the bus. He thought, okay, Delhi, ice cream, bath, darshan of Hanuman to the left. Okay, Hanuman, because he wanted to be a good sadhu. So they went, and so they get there in the bus, and they're just up close to that particular statue of Hanuman is him lying down. It's highly unusual. And then suddenly a rickshaw comes up, and someone in the bus goes, oh, shit, there's Maharaji. And there he was, and they all met him, and he said, follow me, and went back to the house he was staying at, where they found out, Ram Dass found out the whole household of people that were there staying, they were woken at 6 o'clock in the morning, and Maharaji said, there's 25 people coming for lunch. Prepare for it. And went down to meet him and brought him back. Famous story. Okay. So, yeah.
Beautiful.
So Ram Dass unfortunately had a stroke in 1997, but he kept speaking and connecting with people around the globe. Then when he passed in 2019, there were messages and tributes all around the world. Sort of in light of that, what would you consider to be his core message to the world in that period toward the end of his life before he passed?
Well, in the years that he was in Maui, his teaching focused on one practice, loving awareness. And it was a meditation where you move basically out of the ego mind story you tell yourself by using the breath to move into the center of your chest, spiritual heart, whatever soul, whatever you want to call it, Buddha mind, and repeat, I am loving awareness, to move from there. And then you'll feel through breath a presence there that is non-judgmental, that is kind, compassionate toward yourself, starting with yourself. So it's a way to really move your perspectives, this from your head to your heart, basically. And this was a major core message of his in Maui. But if you ask me about the entire lifetime span of a life, he only was concerned with one, and not all the time. He's not he wasn't an enlightened being where it wasn't. Neem Karoli Baba was actually not known not as a saint, but a siddha. A siddha is someone, they don't teach, they don't do anything like that. They just be with people, and there's no polarization. There's no me and you anymore. They're only there for whatever people need. So, they used to say in India, for every 10,000 saints, there's one siddha. So it's a rare thing, and there's been a number of them in India in the last couple of 100 years. Really, for the span of his lifetime, it was absolutely sharing what he had gotten. That was, and as I said, of course, not all the time. He was not living beyond, duality. But when the year he died, I was living with him in the summer, and for a while. And I said, why did you, because Neem Karoli Baba had said when he first came back to America, do not talk about me at all. That's all Ram Dass did. So I said, why did you do that? He told you not to talk about it. And it was a bit of a jibe because I kind of knew. And he said, I had a jewel handed to me. I could not do anything but share that jewel. That is his greatest contribution. The way in which he was able to serve in that way is extraordinary through his entire lifetime.
That's so, Raghu. As a scientist, I'm really fascinated by our guests' personal descriptions of the nature of the ego as they experience it individually as a human being. First, having known him so well, do you think you can give us a sense of how you think Ram Dass experienced the ego? And second, can you give us your personal thoughts on the nature of the ego? What is it, and how does it present itself to you?
That's a big question, but basically, I mean, I can only give my own experience. I'm not inside Ram Dass. I well knew that his awareness level was really high around the story we tell ourselves, the ego, the judgments we make to ourselves and everybody else. All of that stuff is just the stuff of the ego. And that's the big I, or the mini me. I'm doing a book with Duncan Trussell, one of the great podcasters that we have around, and we're close friends. And it's called The Movie of Me to the Movie of We, an audio, an ebook. And that's really what our journey is. And the ego is primary to not wanting to share, shall we say. The self-interest level is extremely high, coming from that place of separation, which the ego is. So I think, all of our work, especially in these times, boy, it's not to say these are worse than any others, but they're the way the planet is reacting to our ignorance is a telling thing. And that is based on what? Power, greed, and separation. That seems to be what the story is. Now, it's not like you can walk around. We did a movie, as you said before, Becoming Nobody. So it's not that you can just, you kill the ego, there's no more ego, and then you're walking around like a sponge or something. No, the reality is we need to work in this life with the something that makes decisions and, has thoughts and so on and so forth. It's just the grasping that goes on. Attachment, the grasping, the clinging. And that's what we're dealing with moving forward in this life for decades for me. I recognize it, and we get through with some love and a sense of humor, and then the ego's a terrible master but a wonderful servant, right? They say.
Yeah, it's we're dealing right now with a high rate of depression and even suicide among young girls. 60 Minutes did a piece on it, and it's the externalization of identity onto the internet and identifying with what external forces say about a young person. And I think you're right. I think that, ego, the mind, intellect, and ego are all tools. And however, they can run the show. And so the practice, I think, of breath work, like you talked about, or loving kindness, just focusing on love, is to quiet the negative spinning mind so that one can sit in sort of this precious, undisturbed present moment, not so in the past, not so in the future, and feel like sort of sensually, a sensory sense of ourselves as precious, as whole now. And I wonder if you have thoughts about that. I love the simplicity of being in the moment, being in joy, and being in love. And so I wonder if you could respond to the sort of the challenges society is facing related to this.
Well, be here now is important. It's not just an iconic phrase, right? I mean, you just said it. Look, on one level, I mean, we have no idea. There's a mystery out there, and we have to respect it, everything is perfect, we were told by Neem Karoli Baba. That was when Ram Dass wanted to go to Pakistan to use his vehicle to be able to move injured people to hospitals and so on. He was going to drive from India to East Pakistan. And Maharaji said, no, don't you realize, Ram Dass, it's all perfect? And Ram Dass, of course, and all of us were like, no, not at all. This is a horror. There is so much horror. We could never understand something like that. In fact, when we used to talk about it, when we were running these retreats, which we still do in Maui and otherwise, he would talk about it and say, of course, I can't say that. So, this is a very difficult thing when you talk about what our world has come through, where we have the kind of people that are in heads of governments that are doing what they're doing. And it's getting, we have it going on here right now, and we've had it going on, and it's a real fight, in terms of that. All we can do is, and this would be Ram Dass, is change our hearts. And then we have a chance to influence another person, share that heart with another person, where maybe they start to think less about themselves and a little bit more about, as Ram Dass said in this Becoming Nobody film, when is what I want enough? When is what I need enough? Much more interesting to serve people. And, but is there always going to be the kind of people, the Trumps and the Putins and all of that? I mean, there always has been, right? Terrible.
Probably there will, right? Yeah. Probably there will.
But do we get a
thought?
Yeah, but do we get a handle by virtue of doing what we can do? And other people start to wake up. I think next generation, I mean, we find it in the work we're doing. There's a lot of young people that are totally committed, particularly around the environmental issue, but also looking at the polarization, which is probably as difficult, although, if continuing on this track won't be a good thing, as we can see, we had a hurricane and a hurricane. The remnants of a hurricane and an earthquake about a few weeks ago here in Ojai, California, where I am. Okay, that's kind of crazy. So there's an advancement going on. And I think that people are really interested in turning this around. And maybe it's a matter of a little bit more time when these kind of people can get into positions of power where they can make a difference. But beyond that, I have no idea. We just do I'm doing what the best we can do with what we do. We have a huge podcast network, Be Here Now network, a huge relative to consciousness. I mean, a couple of million people a month are listening to the podcast. We bring to the table as much as we can to share with people. So, it's up to us to change our hearts.
Beautiful, beautiful. And so if a listener wanted to learn from your podcast or take courses, tell us what's going on over the next 6 months or a year, and how our listeners can get to know what your teaching is, and of course, Ram Dass's.
Well, ramdass.org. Go there and put your email address in there. And then weekly you'll get all of what we're doing, all the offerings, from the online courses to the in-person retreats to the films and the books and the music and everything we do. We do a lot of stuff because, first of all, Ram Dass and the people around him recorded, from the 60s. We have this incredible library. So we have that, and the way in which we can repurpose it alongside of contemporary material is amazing. Or what we did with Alan Watts and Ram Dass. So it is very rich, and we're fortunate that after Ram Dass's passing, it even blew up even more. Of course, there was a pandemic and the lovely, hey, we're all at home, we have nothing to do, so get on the net, so that was part of it. But yeah, as I say, there are people, droves of them, still finding Be Here Now. And yeah, he was, one day, just a story, I don't know, it's a non sequitur, but it was the time I was spending the summer with him, the year that he died, 2019. And so with my usual producer's hat, I had some stuff I needed to talk to him about, to arrange, and it was breakfast time. And okay, so I went to the caretaker, where is he? Well, he's just getting shaved, go up and talk to him. So I ran upstairs. I had all this stuff in my head that we had to straighten out and arrange and produce. So I walk into the bathroom where he's like shaving with his one good arm. He was paralyzed on his right side, fortunately, because he was a lefty. Anyhow, he sees me come in. He looks at me, and he purposefully puts the razor down on the sink. He didn't say a word, and then I got stopped in my tracks. I mean, just think of this. This is way after the fact. I've had a long-term relationship, way after the fact. And he just said, good morning. And everything that I had that I thought was so important that I needed to do evaporated, and we were just here. And I said, so, oh, you're still doing that Be Here Now thing, eh? He laughed. Because that was a reality. It was like he was just in that place. There was no words, and it was just fun. But all the way up till he died. Be Here Now.
Well, kudos to the work you're doing and putting all this together. It's really magnificent. I love the work you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
That's wonderful.
My childhood best friend Megan visited my dorm on New Year's Eve, and she suggested we do acid. Impulsively, we decided to trip right away. We spent the first night a few hours getting dolled up, taking Polaroid pictures, and reminiscing about our long friendship. We felt an intense love for each other like never before. As the sun rose, we were amazed at how much time had passed. We couldn't stop laughing and feeling joyful. Megan was laughing so hard that she needed a moment to recollect herself in the hallway. After a few minutes, I call out her name and she appears out of nowhere, looking as if she had just seen a ghost in my bedroom door. I had a poster of all of the planets hanging up on my wall, and she described her current feelings as if she had walked in and seen that poster when it triggered a disoriented state for her. She peered in the room, and it felt like to her that she was a few seconds ahead in time, and she saw the planets on the poster almost shift. Her laughter turned to fear within minutes. It was almost like Megan was in fast motion and her mind had played a time trick on her. The trip for both of us had took a drastic turn as we both needed to be brought back down to earth. Megan kept asking if I was okay, which in turn led me to keep asking her the same thing, and we psyched each other out. We stayed up for another 24 hours, fascinated by the power of our minds. Megan's experience with a time trick and my boosted confidence were unexpected outcomes. This night of taking Polaroids and dressing up became an unforgettable experience. Acid not only strengthened our friendship, but also provided a new perspective on reality and the effects of psychedelics.
It is time to play with perception, identity, and the ego. In this meditation, we are going to experience ourselves expanded. We're going to sort of dissolve our sense, our own present internal sense of what we think our organs and our blood and our vessels might be, and our skin that frames us in our own body, And we're also going to dissolve just a little bit our external surroundings. And so with your awareness, I want you to sit in the most comfortable place. Make sure that your neck and back aren't strained. You can sit in a chair with your feet on the ground and your hands relaxed in your lap, or you can sit on a pillow with your knees lower than your hip bones so that your spine is curved. And I want you to bring your awareness inside into that beautiful, familiar internal terrain where you've known since you were a child, young adult, and adult. And just be quite aware here. Come right inside. And with your awareness, I want you just to experience your breath going in and out and feel. I want you to move out of your thinking mind and feel as sensation arises. Just for a moment. Now, with your awareness, I want you to imagine a ball of light as luminous as the sun, as warm and inviting as a summer day. And I would like for you to enliven first your heart and your lungs and your chest as though your organs disappear or the imagination of them, and all that remains is this luminous light. Feel into this. All of a sudden, your stomach becomes just pure light. Watch as you move down your legs into your feet, toes and feet, and again move up into your arms, your hands, and watch as this luminosity enlivens your neck and your brain, your face. What is left but this bright, vibrating, warm light that fills your entire inner cavity? And sit with that for a moment. No thoughts, just observe. No history of memory of what's in your body, just white, luminous light. And now, with your awareness, take that light to the edge of your skin. The whole frame of your skin lights up as well, and it causes a luminosity around you. So whatever you think is in front of you, or behind you, or to the left or to the right, I want to invite you to dissolve that thinking and create luminosity in 4 directions. You might find that the walls in your house disappear and there's no neighbors. There's just this expanded whiteness. Feel the same on what you may be sitting on. What's there? Nothing but luminosity, nothing but whiteness, nothing but energy. Molecules, cells, that mace, frame, solid matter are the only thing there. Triggering energy, just whiteness. And the same above you. No roof, just the whiteness of expanded sky out into the solar system. Feel luminosity in your own body, on the edges of your skin, and in 4 directions. Nothing but whiteness, no thoughts. Rest, my friend, in this cloud of present awareness. No past and no future. Just this delicious, exquisite moment of presence. Consciousness illuminates everything. When you feel ready, I just want you to bring your expanded awareness that's in 4 directions and above and below. Just gently begin to move back from this expanded self back into your own beautiful, vibrating, exquisite body, all light and illuminated. Just feel for a moment the pulsating of your own self. And now bring into memory your organs, your senses, your feelings, your perceptions. And when you feel ready, you can gently begin to move your fingers and toes. Breathe a little deeper and open your eyes when you feel ready to come out of this meditation. I want to inspire you to use this meditation to quiet the mind and rest in the truth of yourself, which is you are a trillion vibrating cells in all directions, internally and externally, and be in presence with that experience. You can practice this in the morning, when you first wake up or after work, or even for a few minutes in the middle of your day. This is Jody Weiss. Please come and learn more about how to dissolve reality with Exploring Reality Maybe. The music you have been listening to is actually my consciousness in motion. To create this hypnotic music, Marsha Britskaya of Nextvox and her team connected musical notes to the frequency of my brainwaves from gamma to delta. The team at Nextvox will be exploring how listening to your own brainwaves can provide health benefits from reducing your blood pressure to calming anxiety. Visit our show notes to learn more about Nextvox.
Exploring Reality Maybe is written, produced, fact-checked, and edited by Jody R. Weiss and David Schwartz. Research support is provided by Semicolon Connects. Music produced by Nextvox. Visit our website at exploringrealitymaybe.org to find show notes, transcripts, bios, and to learn more. If you like the show, please visit our website to donate.